Hey guys, welcome to the shop. So today, what are we doing? We are getting ready to put in our modified wheel tubs. If you watched any of the videos, I widened these 1 inch, and now I need to modify the floor pans so that we can get this wheel house to fit in there, and then modify all the other stuff that's attached to the wheelhouse. So anyway, let's flip the camera around real fast as a quick reminder of everything we got to do. So there's one of the wheel tubs. This would be the passenger side where I widened it 1 inch, and the same with the driver's side. And I put in a new front floor pan, and we need to modify the floor pan here, right? Because I need to move it in like 3/4 of an inch or so. And then here is part of the trunk pan, the original trunk pan. So when I do that, I got to shorten it on, 1 inch on either side as well. And then you can see we have no trunk drops. We've got nothing back here at all. So we need to fit the trunk troughs in here, or trunk drop-offs as well. Before we even consider, this sheet metal that goes in this area. So we've got everything fixed up, but we got a lot of work to do to get these wheel houses, to fit. And then all the other sheet metal to fit as well. So this will be a several part series. So the first thing we got to do is I'm going to see if I can even fit the wheelhouse in there and get an idea how much I need to trim, the floor pan there on the front on both sides here to move it in and then weld it up. And then, we'll come back here and probably work on this pan here to get it to fit. And then we'll start fitting up these trunk drops. Nothing's going to get welded in. Everything's going to be basically clamped in place, cleat-coed, that kind of stuff. I'll probably weld, the flanges back onto like the floor pan. When I cut this, an inch on either side shorter, or 3/4 of an inch, or 7/8, however much I got to do, I'll probably weld those up. So then we can clamp all that up, and then we can, work on the trunk drop. So that's kind of, I think, the progression of order as we go through this. So let's jump right into it. All right, guys, so here you can see what I cut out, and I actually could have cut less out at the top here, and maybe done something different, but we could have probably shaped it, done some different things, but we'll go ahead and take the piece that we cut out there, we'll fit it up, carefully weld it in. So I've got this, as you can see, all clamped up here on the inside, so the wheelhouse is nice and tight where it's going to be, when we put it in permanently. I've got several clamps out here. That way we can suck this, outer wheelhouse as tight to the quarter panel as we can, because if you were to feel up here, there's a good 1/2 inch or better on this lip, that I can trim from the quarter panel to the outer, wheelhouse. So we'll clamp this real tight, and that's what I was saying. We can trim this a little bit more to get that additional wheel clearance. We've got it clamped tight here. We've got it clamped tight to the rocker panel. So, that way we know when we go to weld this all up, everything should work. Now, the only area that we may have to trim is right in this area a little bit. Maybe just take a little bit of material out right here, because it's close to hitting the frame, or we can bend it in. But other than that, you can see, we've got clearance all the way around the frame here. So I can stick my hand in here, no problem. So when we go to stick that, upper panel in, we shouldn't have any issues. And then as I make this patch piece back here to come down and, to the bottom quarter panel and to the truck drop off here, that should, hopefully not create any problems either. So anyway, just a quick little update so you can see. So we'll get into a bunch more pictures, but I figured doing a little narration here, or, talking might help you understand what's going on. So. All right, guys, so there's the mount that I cut out. And you saw the picture with it clickoed in, but you can see here, basically I made this piece and it's kind of funky through here and then it wraps around and comes up. You know, and so I basically used my stretcher shrinkers and some 18 gauge and took my time to form this piece. And you know, we'll click back in here in a few minutes, but now I'm going to clean this area up, hit it with weld through primer, hit this piece up with weld through primer on the back side real good, and then drill a few 5/16 holes so we can, you know, plug weld this piece in for good. And then you know, we'll go to the other side, do it, and then we'll try to fit this top panel in place. Actually, guys, what I'm going to do is I clickoed this back into place first, and I've got this, you know, all clamped up for now. I'm going to go over and do the same thing over there. Before I plug weld this all in for good, I'm going to fit that side up as well. And then, you know, we'll clicko it in place, get it to be a nice tight fit, and then we'll figure out this top shelf, you know, clamp it up into place before we do any welding. So let's check this out and kind of do some more fitment first. All right, guys, so quick update. I've cut both sides of, you know, this rear package shelf down. Didn't have to take off as much as I thought. And then you can see I'm making a new template, and I'm kind of glad I am doing this because, you know, the metal here on the sides, I tried to patch up and I didn't do the best job. So now we have a chance to put in all new metal here, real good and solid to weld to for the wheel houses to make that structure really strong. So here is my little template that I need to go by, you know, and we'll weld it up here on the edge all along here. The other thing I'll need to do is down here, there was like a little tab that stuck down that went full length. It was about a 1/2 inch long, so that way I can weld, you know, do a couple of plug welds down here, you know, to give it strength. And then there was a couple of tabs sticking out here and here that I could also do a couple little plug welds too. And then, you know, and then welded the seam all along the top. So here's my donor piece again from my 1970 Dodge Dart. So we'll go ahead and, you know, stick this up here somehow, and we'll get 2 pieces out of this up here, and then we'll patch this up, weld it all in, and then we'll stick it in there, clamp it up, and then we can start working on, you know, figuring this area out, redoing both of those so then, you know, it ties into the quarter panel and everything. So that's kind of where we're at. All right, guys, as you can see, we have the shelf kind of set in place here. Just a couple of clamps holding it up right now. The next thing we're going to work on is a couple of templates. So I need to kind of rebuild these wheel houses a little bit down here below. So we're going to go ahead, and I've got this one mocked up kind of where I want it. And then it will kind of come over here like so. So this is the first template we'll make. And then we can kind of cut this out. There's some good metal here, but we're going to redo it. Put in some better metal. we can cut this out. We can get a nice fit here, down below, you know, and then we can weld this all up so it'll be nice and solid. So this is the first template. I'll have to try to figure out what to do over here because it's going to be different than this side. But this contour here will be the same. It's just I'll have to come up higher and then figure out, you know, anyway. Template number 1 is in pretty nice shape here. I'm pretty happy with it. So now we can go ahead and cut this out, and then we'll just kind of clamp it up a little bit just to see how it looks. Take all this back apart and then weld this up and then put it all back together. So then we can figure out how to fit that piece in there because it's way off. Anyway, let's go ahead and get this done. Much more pictures and stills, and we'll show you the progress. All right, guys, so we've kind of got this template made up. It is not 100% perfect, but it is pretty darn close to where I think we can make this piece, and it'll line up pretty darn good. So what's going to happen is, you know, this piece all through about here will be pretty easy to do. When we get over here, it's going to be more complex. You can see it actually butts up to the flange, you know, on the quarter panel here, so we can weld it in, except for this upper part. We may need to kind of cut it something like this, and then, you know, make a piece here. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this yet. So what I may do is go ahead and make, you know, like I said, kind of cut it through here somewhere, you know, do this whole piece, and then kind of make this piece over here separate, and then kind of weld it all up. So that's kind of where we're at on the 2 templates, so I can get the wheel houses done, and, you know, these will be able to be welded in, and then, you know, I won't weld them in just yet. You know, obviously I need to kind of cut across here, and we need to put all this stuff in, and like I said, need to figure out these trunk troughs, these trunk drop-offs. But before I do these trunk drop-offs, I want to make sure I've got all this done. Anyway, a lot of talking. Let's get into making. All right, guys, so I've got this, you know, piece made up, all cut out, you know, for the fender, or I'm sorry, for the wheelhouse, and it's just a little bit short right there. So what I'm going to do is make a little piece, and I'll just carefully TIG weld that in, or MIG it, and we'll just grind it down just to get a little better fit there. It's about a finger width away from the quarter panel in this area. You know, I've got it clamped tight here, and then as you go up, you know, right about here, it's about my finger width wide away from the quarter panel to be able to weld to it. So we'll have to do a little massaging of the metal in this area. But what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and take a Sharpie, draw this out. We'll cut this out. We will tack weld this in several spots, and then we will go ahead and, you know, set it back in place. You know, see what I need to do to massage this area. In other words, hammer and dolly to get it to form a little better. Who knows, maybe I can take this big clamp once we got several tacks in place and kind of help draw it in and a little hammer dolly work, and we'll get this to fit better. Like I said, we'll add that little piece there. So anyway, this isn't too darn shabby. I'm pretty happy with this first shot at it. You know, we'll go ahead and just cut it here, like I said, and then we'll tack weld this piece in, you know, with several tacks all along, and then we'll go ahead and do a little forming. All right, guys, and so here's what the passenger side looks like so far. It's not as clamped up as you can see as the other side was. I need to trim it down a little bit. You know, you can see by my marks, just little over 1/8 of an inch up to this point. And if you notice, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this piece off and out because it does not fit as tight over here. And then it's kind of funky, you know, the wheelhouse on the passenger side. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. We'll fit all this up. You know, it's fits good down here to the, you know, to the bottom of the quarter. You know, I could clamp that in real easy. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and, again, same thing. We'll tack all this up, you know, get all this put into place, get it formed and tacked into place. And then what we will do is put it back in, you know, clamp it all up. And then, you know, we'll figure out how to make this piece here so that it's nice and tight to the wheelhouse here, you know, and also to the quarter panel. So when we go to weld it in, it does good. Kind of like the same thing on the other side in this general area. So now that we've got, you know, a couple of lines marked, right, to where I know where to put it back when I go to weld it, and I need to make sure when I weld it right, it kind of just goes straight down. Anyway, let's tear this apart now and take a bunch of pictures of, you know, fitting this up, and we'll come back and see how it looks in a little bit. All right, guys, so I'm going to call passenger side fender well done. She fits in here. You can see she is pretty tight here to the rail, to the frame, I should say, to the rail. But anyway, she's pretty tight here, but there's enough clearance so that 1 inch, you know, that we added, you can see right to the wheel well did all right. Now these I am salvaging because these were rusted. This was pretty much all rusted out. And, you know, I forgot about, as you saw, this piece here. So I needed to add this little piece so that, you know, I can weld that to it in this area. It'll fit here, but it was, you know, missing basically this little area. So I went ahead and kind of welded it down. So otherwise, we've got this pretty much all done. What I'm going to do is take it out for the final time here in a few minutes, and then I'm going to paint this first, paint it first, and then I figured since it's out, we'll go ahead and seam seal both sides of this, and then seam seal the factory seam right here, all the way up and around, you know what I mean, and then kind of paint it up a little bit. So we'll hit it with the weld through primer, you know, on the lip here, on the top side of this lip, and then the bottom side, right, of the fender well, the wheel well. So that way, you know, when I weld it all up, you know, that it'll be corrosion protected at least a little bit. And then, you know, we'll get this all ready to go so we can weld this in permanently. Now onto the passenger side. I'm sorry, driver's side. All right, guys, so here's the passenger side, all clamped up so you can kind of see how it looks. You know, we've got plenty of clearance, as I mentioned earlier, to the frame. You can see it a little better maybe here. You know, we've got it set up to where we can now do the wheel well drops. I scratched the hell out of my paint on the frame here, so I'm gonna have to repaint the frame in this area a little bit from taking the wheelhouse in and out so many times. So once we put the wheelhouse in and get it welded up for the final time, then I'll come through and touch up the frame and everything with paint. Because what I'm going to do is once we get the passenger side all fit up, the driver's side all fit up and all welded in and everything, I'm going to weld all this up. This panel, you know, across here. We're going to weld the wheelhouses to the quarter panels. We're going to weld up the wheelhouses to the, you know, the front window area there, or the back window area. You know, we'll start putting in these brackets here, you know, and here. We'll put in those braces there. You know, we'll do all that once I get this other wheelhouse fit up. Because then in the next video, we will deal with how to put in the trunk troughs or the trunk drop-offs, whatever you want to call them. All right, guys, so just a little update. So what I needed to do was cut 1/4 of an inch here or so, 3/8 of an inch off the floor pan, because that trunk area right here in the back was not, butting up to this edge. So I needed to do some work and get that to butt up to that edge. You can see the couple of clecos there to kind of help hold it in place. That whole area will be covered in seam sealer like it was from the factory. So what I need to do now is take it back apart and then drill a bunch of holes all the way across so I can, eventually plug weld it to the floor pan. And then I need to put it back in, mark it with a Sharpie, go back and grind those areas out. The paint where I'm going to be welding, to, before I put the wheel houses in and start welding this all back up. So just a quick little update on, all the stuff that's going on. All right, guys, quick update. Both wheel houses welded in. Next we'll weld in this piece across here, and then I can put in these little brackets here and there to stiffen this all up, and then those front braces that go there and there. So just kind of the order of how I welded this thing up. I still need to grind, the welds down, but as you saw, I had it all clamped up, everything in position. And then so what I did is I came in and welded, for example, this area first, okay? And then I came in and welded right down there, that little pocket inside there. And then I welded up this area on the inside, okay? Which would be to the floor pan, all right? Which would be, the area I'm talking about right here to the floor pan. Then I did that next. And then I came and did up and around the wheelhouse on the outside. And then, so I kind of started up front here and then just worked my way back. So what I would do is take clamps like on, either side of the hole, make sure it was clamped nice and tight so then I could weld it. And then the other thing I did is, because I used a lot of weld through primer, all the hole openings, I took a small screwdriver and cleaned out all the weld through primer, so then I had good metal to just weld through, and then all the weld through primer, was all around that opening. So that way it was a whole lot easier to weld. Instead of trying to go through the primer, I scraped it off, like I said, with a little mini screwdriver, and then I welded it. So that's kind of the process I went through. And I did one wheelhouse and then I did the other wheelhouse. So I did one side and then the other side. So next, like I said, I'm going to put this panel across here. We'll do that. Then I want to, like I said, put in a couple of these braces, and then I got to spend a lot of time grinding down the welds. All right, guys, that is all welded up now. Wheel houses are all welded up. Welds are pretty much all ground down. So what I did is I welded across here first, and then I welded this one, and then came over and welded this one. Welded them from the inside of the wheelhouse to here, and then from the inside of the wheelhouse, to that. And then, the inside of the wheelhouse and all the ground down all the welds. So these are now in solid, and the car is a whole lot more rigid. So I think that's going to wrap up this video. I mean, I still need to put those in and that, but you guys don't need to see that. So like I said, guys, that kind of wraps up, putting in the wheel houses and putting in that other piece. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of clamping, trial, error, and fit, fixing stuff along the way, using weld through primer and priming the parts. I was using a bunch of leftover primer. That's why the two wheel houses are kind of different color. But I use the weld through primary in the primary areas that I still need to weld. So next, what we'll do is next video, we'll do the trunk drops. And then after the trunk drops are done and welded in and fit, you know, well, then we'll put in the next video after that will be the trunk pieces, you know, so we'll finish up the trunk. You know, we'll put in the braces for the trunk, and then, you know, the pans for the trunk. And that will get us the whole trunk done, you know, with most of the braces put back in. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you made it to the end of the video, you can see it takes a lot of work to do this and a lot of patience and time. I am now retired, so I have all the time in the world, you know, to make sure we do this right and once. So I found a couple things that I had done earlier. I redid them. I'm much happier with how the car is turning out. So stick around for the next video, guys. Again, anything I make off these videos goes right into these cars. And I don't make a whole lot of money on these videos, so it's kind of fun to do them, and hopefully you guys can learn when you're kind of doing yours. Anyway, see you guys.